This is part one of installing OpenSquiggly on Amazon's Elastic Kubernetes service. In this video, all we're going to be doing is just covering the prerequisites, setting up, configuring the system, getting ready to create the cluster, and in the next video, we'll actually create the cluster. So I'm logged into my Amazon AWS console here. If I either click on the recently visited, or if it's not in your recently visited list, you can search for EKS. Yeah. Anyways, I'm going to go to the EKS and notice that I currently have no clusters installed. Okay, so I have a fresh slate. Now, most of this work we're going to be actually doing from the command line, and we're going to need 4 command line tools installed, and let's just test, which I've already installed, but I'm just going to show what I did to get my system into this. The first tool we're going to need is the AWS command line tool. And if I do AWS -- version, we see I do have that installed. And the way I installed that is I went out to these instructions here. We have a link to this page on our written documentation. It has instructions for different operating systems. And so you just follow those instructions and you'll get AWS installed. The second tool that we're going to need is EKS Cuddle. And I can test that, which again, I already do have installed. And EKS Cuddle, again, we have links to the documentation on how to install EKS Cuddle from our written documentation. And once again, it depends on which operating system you're using as to which instructions you will follow. All right. And then when we get further, after we create the cluster and we're ready to actually install OpenSquiggly, we're going to need, of course, which we always need for any Kubernetes install, we're going to need kube control, kubectl, which I can test by doing kubectl version output equals YAML. I think I misspelled that. Yeah, I had an extra K in there. All right, and then the last command that we're going to need, of course, is we're going to need Helm to install that OpenSquiggly Helm chart. All right, so those are the 4 command line tools you're going to need. Oh, the instructions for installing kubectl and Helm are on our website under the Installing Kubernetes section, and we have links out to external resources for installing those. All right. A couple other important points you're going to want to attend to is that you need to make sure that your Amazon user has permission to create a cluster. And so what you need to do is go to the Identity and Access Management panel by searching for IAM and go to Roles. And you're going to need to create a role and make sure that that user is assigned that role. And that role needs to have this Amazon EKS cluster policy attached to that role, and the role needs to be assigned. So you can use this screen here in the AWS console to create that. If you don't do this, then you're going to get these permission denied errors and things like that. It's going to be a little frustrating. All right, and another important detail you're going to need to attend to is you're going to need to create an access ID and get the associated access key ID and the secret key associated with that access ID. And so the way you do that is you click here in the upper right hand corner of your AWS console and go to security roles. I'm not going to show it here. I've already done this, but you go to security credentials, scroll down about halfway down. There's an access keys section. You can create a new access key And that access key is going to give you the access key ID and then the secret key. So you're going to have these two numbers or strings that goes along with that. And then you're going to need to save those off. Once you close that window down, you can't retrieve your secret key anymore. So you're going to want to save those off and put them in a password vault or something that's going to allow you to get back to them. All right, and once you have those two values, you're going to need to set up your command line environment one of two ways. You can do, the first thing you need to do is set the access key ID, which you can do by doing AWS configure set access underscore key, and then your access key ID. All right, so that's one way you can do it. If you do this, it will store your access key in your tilde/aw.aws /config file. And the other way you can do it is you can set your environment variable by saying export AWS access key ID equals, and then put the value in, right? So that's the first environment variable we need to set. And then the second one is to set that secret key. So then you're going to do AWS configure set, and then your secret key here. Or you can do, that's one option, or you can do export AWS secret access key equals, and then put the value in. All right. And another thing that it's optional, but you probably really should do this, is you should set a default region for your AWS. So do AWS configure set region, and then, like, for example, US East 2 or whatever region you're using, right? And in order to verify that you have all this set, you can do AWS configure list, and that will list out all your configuration settings and tell you whether they're coming from your environment variable or whether they're coming from your .aws/config file. I'm not going to show it. I'm not going to do this, so I don't reveal any of my settings, but that's how you would do it. And then if that is all set up right, that should allow the EKS cuddle command to be able to connect to your Amazon account, which means that you should be able to do EKS cuddle get clusters. And if this doesn't return any errors, then you should be good to go. And with me, it says no clusters found. That's correct, because as we saw at the beginning, I don't have any existing clusters yet. And so with that, I have everything set up. I'm getting no error messages. EKS cuddle is able to contact the Amazon account and report back no clusters found. So I am good to go for step 2 of this video series, where we actually create the cluster. Thank you.